I never thought I'd be sitting here, typing this out, telling some story that feels more like a nightmare than real life. But here I am. My name's Jake, and I'll just start from the beginning. My wife Emily and I have been together for about 8 years now. We got married 5 years ago, and honestly, for most of that time, I thought we had a pretty solid thing going. She was the kind of girl who always looked good, acted confident, and had this way of making you feel like everything was perfect. Yeah, she could be bitchy sometimes. She's always been quick with a snarky comment, especially when she didn't get her way. But I thought that was just her personality. It's what I signed up for. Our relationship wasn't perfect, though. We had our fights, sure. Mostly about money, her being overly dramatic about little things, and her secretive attitude sometimes. But I always trusted her. Or at least I thought I did. We had an anniversary trip planned for a while, just something quiet, just us. She kept going on about how she wanted it to be special, how we needed to reconnect. I was excited, hopping. This would be the weekend we'd finally get away from all the stress, just focus on us. The first signs that something was off started a few days before the trip. Emily became strangely distant, canceling plans last minute, claiming she was busy with work, or had to stay late at the office. I didn't push her too much. I figured maybe she was stressed, but she also started lying about where she was going. I'd ask her if she was leaving town and she'd say no, she was just staying home, maybe meeting some friends. But her phone kept changing and I noticed her hiding things more often. Her texts seemed more secretive. She'd get defensive when I asked about her plans, saying I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, which honestly hurt more than I want to admit. The night before we left for our trip, Emily was unusually snippy. I caught her in a lie about where she'd been. She told me she went to the gym, but her workout clothes weren't even in her bag, and I found her phone with a message from some guy I didn't recognize. She quickly deleted it. When I looked over her shoulder, but I saw that she'd been talking to someone late into the night. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Something just didn't sit right anymore. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just stressed. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on. The trip was supposed to be a fresh start, but I was already feeling uneasy about everything. I kept telling myself I'd wait until I saw her in person, until I could confront her face to face about what I'd found. Little did I know, that confrontation was going to change everything. We left early the next morning, packed and ready to go, and I tried to push aside the gnawing feeling in my gut. I wanted to believe that maybe I was just overreacting, that Emily was stressed as she always claimed, and that her strange behavior was just her way of coping. But as we drove out of town, I kept checking my phone, trying to ignore the emptiness inside me. I kept replaying those little moments, the texts she deleted, the vague excuses. The trip itself started off pretty okay. We drove for hours, listened to music, joked around a bit. But there was this lingering tension I couldn't shake. Every time Emily looked out the window or laughed at something, I'd catch myself thinking about how different she seemed, like she was hiding something. I kept thinking about her phone, her texts, and the way she'd lied about her plans. That evening, we arrived at the cabin she'd booked. It was secluded, perfect, just woods all around, a quiet lake, no neighbors in sight. I figured finally some peace and privacy. But that's when I noticed she was acting even more weird. She kept checking her phone. She was on edge, snapping at me for no real reason and refusing to tell me who she was texting. I got suspicious. My instinct told me something was seriously wrong. I decided to check her phone while she was in the bathroom. I knew I shouldn't have, but I couldn't resist. I unlocked it, and what I found made my stomach drop. Her messages with some guy named Jake, yeah, same as me, were all over the place. They weren't just talking about nonsense. There were plans for later. A lot of flirtatious language and even references to a secret trip they'd taken last weekend. My heart hammered in my chest. I scrolled through more messages and there were photos, pictures of her with this guy in some cabin that looked just like this one, holding hands, laughing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, my Emily, was cheating on me with my best friend. In a cabin I paid for. I felt numb. My mind was racing, trying to process this chaos. I never thought she'd do something so cruel, so blatant. And I never thought my best friend, Mark, would betray me like this. I felt a cold fury rising, mixed with heartbreak. The trust I had in her shattered in that moment. I stared at her phone, my hands trembling. I knew I couldn't confront her just yet. I needed to figure out my next move. But the pain was overwhelming. How long had this been going on? How many times had I trusted her, believed in her? And now, here I was, stuck in the middle of a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I looked out over the water, trying to breathe, realizing that everything I thought I knew was gone. I stayed up that night, sitting on the porch of the cabin, staring into the darkness, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. My mind kept circling back to that moment I saw her and Mark together, how close they looked, how happy they seemed. I'd known Mark for years. We'd been through a lot, good times, bad times. And now I was staring at the ultimate betrayal, my wife and my best friend screwing around behind my back. It was like a punch in the gut every time I thought about it. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I also knew I had to be smart about it. I didn't want to just blow up and yell, although honestly I was furious enough to do that. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to think this through. I went inside the cabin, found her sitting on the bed, pretending to look innocent, but I could see the guilt in her eyes the moment I stepped in. "Emily," I said, my voice lower than I wanted but cold. "We need to talk." She looked up at me, her face a mixture of annoyance and defiance. "What's wrong? Are you kidding? I was just—" "Save it," I cut her off. "I saw the messages, the pictures, the plans you made with Mark. Don't lie to me now." I saw her flinch, but she quickly composed herself and threw out some typical bullshit. Something about how I was paranoid, how I didn't trust her, how it was all just one big misunderstanding. She even had the nerve to call me insecure and accuse me of ruining our trip, but I wasn't buying any of it. I told her I knew everything, that I'd seen her sneaking around, making a fool of me. That was when she got defensive, said she was tired of my accusations, that I was overreacting. She started yelling, calling me controlling, saying I was making her feel trapped. That she needed space, that I was a jerk, always suspicious, and that if I was so insecure, maybe I didn't deserve her. That was the moment I realized she was justifying her cheating. She didn't care. She thought she could lie her way out of it. That's when I felt my blood boil. I wanted to explode, to scream, to do something, but I held back. Instead, I told her I'd seen enough, that I was done. I told her she could pack her shit and leave if she wanted to, that I didn't want to hear one more lie, that I was done trusting her. She looked at me, eyes cold, like she didn't care about my feelings anymore. And honestly, that hurt worse than anything. The woman I loved, who I'd trusted with my life, was just a stranger now. I didn't even recognize her. I had no idea how we got here, how her lies had piled up so high, or how Mark had become part of this mess. But the worst part, I knew I couldn't just walk away without feeling broken inside. My mind was racing with feelings I couldn't quite put into words: anger, betrayal, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. I knew I had to decide what to do next. How do you move on when the person you trusted most in the world has turned into someone else? How do you look at your best friend, knowing he crossed that line too? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing: this was only the beginning of the fallout. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a stomach full of knots. I kept replaying everything: the betrayal, her cold face, Mark's treachery, and I felt like I was trapped in some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I knew I couldn't stay in this cabin, pretending everything was okay. I had to do something. I told Emily I was leaving, not to talk her out of it, but just to get some space to think. She didn't fight me, she just shrugged and said, "Whatever," like she didn't care. I packed up my stuff without making a scene. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream, to do something destructive, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I just walked out that door, feeling hollow, like I'd been punched in the stomach 100 times. I hit the road, not really caring where I was going, just needing to get away from that place and from her. As I drove, my mind kept spinning. I thought about all the times Emily lied, all the little signs I ignored, all the moments I should have seen it coming. I felt stupid for trusting her so blindly. I also felt a deep, gnawing anger at her, at Mark, at myself for not seeing it sooner. How could they do this? How could they betray me like this, so openly, so blatantly? I kept asking myself if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. The worst part was knowing that I'd loved her, genuinely loved her, and now that love was just a pile of broken pieces. I decided I needed to confront Mark, the guy I'd called my best friend for years. I mean, how could he? How could he screw my wife? But I also knew that whatever I did, it wouldn't bring back what I lost. Still, I had to say something. I called him from a roadside diner, voice rough from exhaustion and anger. He answered, sounding surprised, probably because I rarely called him when I was angry. I didn't even waste time on pleasantries. Mark, I saw the messages. I saw the pictures. I know about you and Emily. I don't know how long this has been going on, but I want to hear it straight from you. What the hell is going on? There was a pause, then Mark started stammering. He tried to deny it at first, saying it was just a mistake, that they didn't mean anything, that it was just sex and it was all her idea, that she was the one who wanted to do it, that she was bored, that she was trying to get back at me. He sounded defensive, like he was trying to justify it, but I didn't want to hear his excuses. I just told him I was done, that I never wanted to see him again, that I couldn't trust either of them anymore. Hanging up, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. I'd lost my wife, my best friend, my sense of stability, but part of me also felt a strange relief. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid I'd been terrified to peel for years. I realized that I'd been living in some kind of illusion, thinking I had a good marriage, good friends, good life. But the truth was, I'd been blind to her bitchy side, her lies, her manipulations. And Mark, he'd always been there, just waiting for a moment to jump in. Now I had no choice but to figure out what came next. I knew I couldn't stay in that town, not after everything. I had to leave, start over somewhere else. But I also knew that rebuilding trust, if that was even possible, was going to be a long, painful process. Still, I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I'd come out of this stronger, even if right now I felt more lost than ever. The betrayal cut deep, but I was learning that sometimes the only way to heal was to face the truth head-on, no matter how much it hurt. After I left that roadside diner, I kept driving with no real destination in mind. I just needed to get away, to escape from the memories, the betrayal, the pain. The further I went, the more I realized I had a choice. I could let it break me, or I could use it as a wake-up call. Honestly, I was furious, heartbroken, and exhausted all at once. But deep down, I knew I had to do something about it. Staying in that town, in that house, around those people, I didn't see how I could trust or even look at myself in the mirror anymore. I decided to go somewhere completely different. Somewhere I could start fresh, far away from Emily and Mark, and just be alone with my thoughts. I found a small town a few states over, one where nobody knew my name, where I could disappear for a while. I rented a modest place, threw myself into work, and tried to keep my mind busy. But I couldn't escape the hurt. Every day, it lingered at the back of my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. During those first few weeks alone, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. I replayed every moment, the lies, the sneaking around, the pictures, the betrayal. I kept asking myself how she could do this. How Mark, of all people, could turn into something so ugly. It hurt worse than I thought it would, knowing I'd trusted them both, thinking they were loyal, that we had something real. Instead, I was just a fool. One night I sat outside, drinking beer and staring at the stars, and I realized something. I'd let myself believe in the fairy tale version of our life. Her smile, her charm, the way she made me feel like I was the only guy in the world. But that wasn't real. Not anymore. The truth was, I'd been blind. She was manipulative, selfish, and so was Mark. And I needed to accept that. I needed to accept that I deserved better, that I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. I started making a list, things I wanted for my future, things I wanted to leave behind, lessons I'd learned. I knew I'd never forget her, never forget what she did, but I also knew I couldn't let it define me. I was hurt, but I was still standing. I'd come out of this stronger, way stronger than I was before. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. It still did, every single day. But I was determined not to let this break me entirely. Now I realize the biggest lesson here. Trust has to be earned, not given blindly. People can surprise you, sometimes in horrible ways. And sometimes, the only way to move forward is to face the pain head-on, accept what's gone, and start building something new. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm done playing the fool. I'm done with her with Mark and with pretending everything's okay. I'll be okay. One way or another, I'll find my way back to happiness. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole experience changed me, not just as a man, but as someone who finally stopped relying on illusions and started facing reality. I used to think trust was everything, but I've learned that trust is something you have to build and protect, not just give away blindly. Emily's betrayal taught me that people can hide their true selves behind charming smiles, and sometimes those smiles mask the worst intentions. The hardest part was not just losing her, but losing the belief I had in the life we built together. That feeling of betrayal cuts deep, like a wound that takes a long time to heal. But with each day, I've learned to live with it, to accept that some things are beyond my control. I can't undo what's been done, but I can choose how I move forward. Now I focus on myself. I've started working out again, reconnecting with old friends, and finally letting go of that toxic past. I still get angry sometimes, at her, at Mark, at myself, but I remind myself that I'm better off without the lies and betrayal. I don't regret the pain. I see it as a necessary part of growing stronger. If I had to give anyone advice from my experience, it would be this: don't ignore the red flags. Don't be blinded by love or trust someone blindly. And when you find out someone you care about has been lying or cheating, don't think you're weak or overreacting. Face it, deal with it, and don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes that's the only way to truly start over. I'm still healing, still figuring out what's next. But I know one thing for sure: I'm done with the past. I'm moving forward, better and more cautious. I've lost people I loved, but I've also gained clarity. And in the end, that's what really matters. Trust is earned, not given, and if someone betrays that trust, they don't deserve a second chance. I've learned that the hard way. And honestly, I feel freer now that I've faced the truth.